Alright, 4 tiers, 19 cryptids. From Bigfoot, the OG forest giant, always leaving weird footprints in the woods and starring in the blurriest photos on Earth, to way down in the Congo, where people swear there's a real-life dinosaur with a long neck, massive body, and a habit of flipping boats just for fun. Let's start at the top. Tier 1, mainstream cryptid, Bigfoot, or Sasquatch. Let's kick things off with America's classic forest monster, Bigfoot. Imagine this. You're hiking through thick trees. It's damp. You smell mud. And then you get hit with this nasty, wet dog stink. Some say that's Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, hanging out nearby. He's supposed to be massive, like 6 to 10 feet tall, arms that reach past his knees, and covered in dark hair. Walks on 2 legs, leaves these giant footprints in the mud, sometimes 2 feet long. The first time you see one in the mud, you might feel a shiver. That's what makes the legend, well, legendary. But this story goes way back, even before this whole cryptozoology thing. Long ago, Native American tribes had stories about a hairy man in the woods, a wild giant who hides just out of sight. They even gave him a nickname, Sasquatch, from the Salish language in British Columbia. Now, jump to 1958, a group of workers in Bluff Creek, California, found a line of massive footprints. A local newspaper printed the story and called it Bigfoot. This became the famous name we know today. Pretty soon, everyone was talking about this mystery creature. It became such a big deal that people didn't care when, years later, the family of one of the workers admitted the tracks were fake. It was just a big wooden foot. By then, Bigfoot was already a star. Even so, people kept seeing strange things. Back in 1924, some miners near Mount St. Helens said giant ape men attacked their cabin at night by throwing rocks. Forest rangers checked it out but didn't find anything. The story just got bigger anyway. Then, in 1967, 2 guys named Patterson and Gimlin filmed something hairy and big walking along a creek. The video is still famous, even though many experts say it was probably a man in a suit. Over the last 50 years, there have been thousands of Bigfoot sightings. Campers, hunters, even police officers have all said they saw a huge, shaggy creature hiding in the trees. Some people say they've heard weird howling or knocking sounds in the woods. But let's be real. When you're scared, your mind can play tricks. A bear standing up, a fallen log, or even another hiker can look pretty creepy in the dark. When it comes to hard proof, it never becomes clear. People have taken pictures, made plaster casts of big footprints, and even set in hair samples. But every time scientists look closer, the proof falls apart. The hairs turn out to be from deer or people. Even the FBI tested some Bigfoot hair ones, and it was just from a deer. And with everyone carrying cameras these days, it's weird that every Bigfoot photo is still blurry. So, what's really going on? A lot of hoaxes, some mistaken animal sightings, and a whole lot of wishful thinking. But the effect is undeniable. Every year, new people head out with flashlights and snacks, hoping to find Bigfoot. For a lot of fans, the real fun isn't finding the monster, but chasing the mystery. Bigfoot might just be a story, but it's a story that keeps people exploring the unknown. And honestly, that's what makes it special. But Bigfoot isn't the only one of his kind. Turns out he has relatives, other big monkey creatures living in far-off, very different places, and actually has a power upgrade. And their names are Yeti, Abominable Snowman. Imagine yourself high in the Himalayas. The wind is cold enough to burn your face. Snow crunches under your boots, and the world is so quiet you can hear your own breath. In this icy place, people say a giant, hairy creature, part man, part beast, lives in the ridges and deep valleys. Locals call it the Yeti. Westerners sometimes call it the Abominable Snowman. Here's how the legend usually goes. The Yeti is big, standing 6 to 8 feet tall, covered in dark brown or reddish fur. Not the white fur you see in cartoons. It's supposed to walk upright, leaving behind huge, broad footprints in the snow. Some stories say it's just a big animal. Others say it has supernatural powers and can freeze you with a stare. Either way, nobody wants to meet it alone. The Yeti legend is way older than the word Abominable Snowman. In Tibet, the word Yeti comes from rock bear or man bear. And in Sherpa stories, the creature is sometimes more spirit than animal, kind of like a mountain guardian or a monster that haunts travelers who get too close to the edge. Outsiders just bundled all these stories together and called it a Yeti. The world first heard about the Yeti in the 1800s, when explorers and mountaineers started seeing weird footprints way up on the ice. In 1921, a British Everest team found a trail of big prints at 21,000 feet. Their Sherpa guides said it was the man-bear snowman, but when a reporter back in India wrote about it, he called it Abominable Snowman. That new name just stuck to their heads, and suddenly people everywhere wanted to know what was hiding in the mountains. But what about the evidence? In 1951, a famous explorer named Eric Shipton took photos of huge, strange footprints in the snow at high altitude. The prints looked almost human, but wider, and some even had what looked like claws. These pictures spread so fast, people everywhere started thinking maybe the Yeti was real. Then came the monster hunters, like sponsored expeditions, big money searches, and even museum relics. One team brought back a Yeti scalp from a monastery. Scientists tested it and said it was really goat skin, not a monster. Even weirder, another team smuggled a so-called Yeti finger out of Nepal in a woman's bra case. Later, DNA testing showed it was actually human, probably from a monk. For a while, governments got in on the craze. Nepal made it illegal to kill a Yeti unless it was self-defense, and started charging high fees for Yeti hunters. Even famous explorer Edmund Hillary tried his luck searching for evidence. He didn't find any Yetis, but he found a lot of stories, and even more whiskey. Later, experts realized melting snow and rocks can make animal tracks look huge and creepy. Bears walking in their own tracks leave marks that seem almost human. Sometimes, local people with wide, barefoot feet made the prints. Every time scientists tested Yeti hair, bones, or poop, it turned out to be from a bear, a dog, or even a goat. There were hoaxes too. In 2011, a group in Russia claimed they found a Yeti nest with twisted tree branches and all. It was later revealed to be fake to boost tourism. Old monasteries sometimes showed off fake relics just to get attention, and some explorers just like telling tall tales. Today, most experts agree the Yeti legend probably grew out of bear sightings, wild stories, and the human urge to believe there's something mysterious in the mountains. Loch Ness Monster. Nessie. The Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie if you want to sound friendly, is the superstar of modern dinosaurs. She's supposed to be a massive long-necked creature, dark and bulky, with humps that slide across the water like a living roller coaster. If you visit Loch Ness and catch a glimpse of something moving in those deep, murky waves, good luck. Your photo might end up on the news. But the story isn't new. It goes back over 1,500 years. There are ancient stone carvings that show strange animals with flippers, sometimes called Pictish beasts, but their link to Nessie is speculative and not directly tied to Loch Ness. Now, here's where things get interesting. In 1933, a new road opened up along Loch Ness, making it way easier for people to spot anything odd on the water. Not long after, a couple saw what they called an enormous animal splashing around. The newspapers went wild, and soon, reporters and even a circus arrived, hoping to cash in these sightings. The circus offered a reward for anyone who would catch Nessie. The Daily Mail even sent a famous hunter to track her down. Instead, he found huge footprints on the shore. Except, when experts checked, they were made with a hippopotamus foot, probably taken from an umbrella stand. Seriously. Even so, the legend kept growing. The real explosion happened in 1934 with the surgeon's photograph. It's that grainy black and white photo of a long neck poking out of the water. For years, people thought this was real proof of a dinosaur living in Scotland, even though, actually, plesiosaurs were not dinosaurs, but aquatic reptiles. But scientists noticed some big problems. Loch Ness was a solid block of ice just 10,000 years ago, so any giant reptile would have been frozen out. Plus, cold-blooded creatures can't survive in freezing water. In the end, the famous photo turned out to be a hoax, made with a toy submarine and a fake head. The guy who faked the footprints was part of this one too. But by that point, nobody really cared. Nessie fever was everywhere. People didn't give up. In the 1960s and 70s, teams of volunteers camped out with binoculars and cameras, scanning the loch day and night. Scientists used sonar, hoping to find something big swimming in the deep. Sometimes the sonar picked up large moving shapes. One group even snapped a blurry underwater photo that looked a bit like a flipper. For believers, that was enough. Even the name Nessoterus rhomboteryx got a spot in a science journal, until someone noticed it was an anagram for Monster Hoax by Sir Peter S. Nice touch. As time went on, the evidence never really got better. Photos and videos showed humps on the water, but most turned out to be boats, deer, logs, or just waves. Huge efforts like Operation Deep Scan in 1987 filled the loch with sonar boats, and found some weird readings, but nothing that could be confirmed as a monster. In 2003, the BBC swept the whole lake with 600 sonar beams and found nothing. So what is Nessie? Some say it's all mistakes, like logs, otters, swimming deer, big fish, even weird wave patterns called seiches. that can look like humps. Sometimes seals swim in from the sea. Hoaxers have built models and faked photos. The wildest theory, that Nessie is a living dinosaur, again, aquatic reptile, is pretty much ruled out by science. But there's one new twist. In 2019, scientists checked Loch Ness for environmental DNA. No dinosaur or monster DNA, but tons of eel DNA. Maybe, just maybe, some people saw giant eels. It's not as exciting, but it fits the facts. Even without real proof, Nessie keeps the crowds coming. Tourists always come back to the Loch. Monster museums fight for visitors, and die-hard researchers still hope for a miracle. Just last year, hundreds of people joined the biggest search in 50 years. They used drones, sonar, and even underwater microphones. Nessie is a legend, not a proven animal, but she's alive in Scotland's stories. And as long as there's fog on the water, someone will swear they saw something move. And honestly, who can blame him? Speaking of modern dinosaurs, we actually have one more modern dinosaur out there. Not in a lake, but in a deep African swamp, with a long neck and stories of smashing canoes. We will talk more about them in Tier 2. Mothman. It's late at night on a country road in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. You're driving with friends. The air smells damp. The only light comes from your headlights. And then you see it. People described Mothman as part man or part bird. Most agreed it had leathery, bat-like wings, a bulky body, and legs like a giant crane. Some even thought it had white or gray feathers. Others said it was covered in dark, shiny skin. When you speed up, it lifts off the ground and glides over your car, silent and fast, keeping pace no matter how hard you push the pedal. This was the scene in November 1966, when two young couples, the Scarberrys and the Millettes, rushed to the police, pale and shaking, talking about a monster with long wings and big red eyes. Of course, as usual, the newspapers ran wild with it. Man-sized bird, creature, something. And just like that, the legend of Mothman was born. But Mothman wasn't finished with Point Pleasant, not by a long shot. Over the next month, the sightings multiplied. Dozens of people around the Ohio River Valley started calling in, swearing they'd seen the same thing. A huge winged humanoid with fiery red eyes, either perched on a rooftop, chasing cars, or just standing by the roadside in the mist. Some said it looked like a man with wings. Others called it a giant bird. One farmer said his dog vanished after he shone a flashlight at two glowing red orbs outside his house. Nobody could agree on every detail, except for one thing, the eyes. Everybody remembered the eyes. But things got much darker in December 1967. At rush hour, the Silver Bridge, Point Pleasant's main link across the river, suddenly collapsed and dropped dozens of cars into the icy water below. 46 people died. And just like that, Mothman sightings stopped. Locals whispered that the creature had been a warning, a sign that tragedy was coming. Some said it was a supernatural omen, their own banshee. Others just called it a tragic coincidence. Years passed, but the legend never faded. Journalist John Keel wrote a book about the sightings and tied them to UFOs, haunted phone calls, and other weird happenings. Hollywood turned the story into a movie in 2002. Point Pleasant went all in and built a 12-foot-tall Mothman statue, launching an annual festival that draws thousands, and opening a Mothman museum packed with old newspapers, sketches, and interviews. But what was it really? Scientists and wildlife experts have a simple answer: misidentified animals. West Virginia University's biologists suggested that the monster could have been a sandhill crane, a really big bird with a red patch around its eyes and a wingspan wider than most cars. Others say it could have been a huge owl, since their eyes can reflect red in headlights. When people expect to see something strange, every shadow becomes a monster. And as for the bridge collapse, it turns out was due to a broken piece of metal, not a curse or omen. There are no photos, no bones, not even a feather. The only real evidence is in the stories, the newspaper clippings, and the memories of those who say they saw something impossible on a dark night. Even now, new Mothman sightings pop up in other states, but experts chalk them up to birds, big imaginations, and the power of suggestion. Maybe there's nothing in the sky at all, or maybe you just missed it. But if you really want to stare at the sky to look for cryptids, there's another winged legend that is supposedly easier to spot than Mothman, yet harder to see. This creature is so huge, its wings block the sun. We will talk about that in Tier 3. Wendigo. The Wendigo is a classic American horror legend. Super skinny, like skin stretched over bone skinny, with pale gray skin and glowing eyes buried deep in its skull. People say it's at least 7 feet tall, maybe taller, and its hands are basically cracked yellow claws. Its mouth is half gone, lips chewed off. just showing nasty, bloody fangs. Some versions give it fur, others slap on deer antlers, but one thing never changes. It always reeks like death. But here's the real question. How did this creepy thing end up in so many campfire stories? The Wendigo legend comes from the Algonquian-speaking tribes, like the Cree and Ojibwe. These were people who actually knew what it was like to starve during brutal winters. For them, the Wendigo wasn't just a monster. It was a warning. It was a spirit of hunger and greed that hunted the selfish. If someone ever resorted to cannibalism, the legend says they could turn into a Wendigo and be cursed to wander the woods forever. Never full, always starving, always hunting. The first written stories go back almost 400 years. Jesuit missionaries heard the locals talk about something called the Achen, or Wendigo, which basically meant evil spirit or cannibal thing in the woods. It preyed on people who wandered off alone there. And over time, the story evolved and started blending with real-life horror. Like in 1879, there was this Cree trapper named Swift Runner. He killed and ate his whole family and said the Wendigo made him do it. Or in 1907, when two Ojibwe brothers murdered a woman because they thought she was turning into one. These cases freaked people out so much that the Wendigo legend started to feel way more real. Some doctors even tried to explain it. They called it Wendigo psychosis, a legit mental illness where people believed they were turning into the creature, or obsessed over eating human flesh. These episodes usually happen during times of famine or extreme isolation. Basically, the cold and hunger started messing with their heads. So, is there any actual proof the Wendigo exists? Short answer, nope. No bones, no bodies, no photos. Just urban legends. When someone sees a Wendigo, it's always secondhand, like scratches in the snow or something moving between the trees. People even swear they've seen old black and white photos of it nailed to barn walls, but those pictures don't exist. It's all memory glitches and folklore doing their thing. The only real evidence was court records and newspaper clippings about people who believed in the Wendigo, or used it as a scapegoat when things got dark. So yeah, the myth is definitely real, but the monster? Not so much. But there's another tale in New Jersey. A monster with bat wings and a horse head, born from a curse, freaking out whole towns. Turns out Wendigo has a wild cousin. Let's check it out. Tier 2. Regional Legends and Semi-Obscure Cryptids. Jersey Devil. Imagine you're walking through the thick woods of South Jersey at night. The trees are tight and it's super silent. You can only hear your own footsteps crunching leaves. Then, out of nowhere, there's a high-pitched scream from the darkness ahead of you, and something just launches out to you. It's got a horse's head, goat horns, bat wings, a snout, a long tail whipping side to side, and it's bouncing around on two scrawny legs. Oh, and hooves instead of feet. Yep, that's the Jersey Devil, New Jersey's most famous monster. People have been telling stories about it for over 2 centuries. Most say it's somewhere between 3 and 6 feet tall. But no matter the version, it's definitely not anything from the zoo. So where did this thing come from? The most famous story starts back in the 1700s. A woman named Mother Leeds was having her 13th kid during a storm, and she'd had enough. So she yelled, "Let this one be the devil." Well, it worked. The baby popped out, morphed into a monster on the spot, grew horns and wings, and shot straight up the chimney into the Pine Barrens. After that, every weird noise or dead chicken in that area was blamed on the devil. But there's no record of any of that. No newspapers, no diaries, nothing contemporary. Historians think the story probably started as gossip tied to the real Leeds family, who were unpopular for religious or political reasons. Over time, Leeds Devil turned into the one and only Jersey Devil. Then came 1909, and things got wild. For one full week in January, people across South Jersey and Philly reported seeing the devil. It flew over rooftops, screamed from the woods, and even attacked a trolley car. It escalated to a full chaos. Schools shut down. Hunting parties went out with shotguns and torches. The Philadelphia Zoo even offered a cash reward if anyone could catch it. Some prankster literally glued wings and horns onto a kangaroo and tried to turn it in. Yeah, seriously. Of course it was fake, but by then the legend was unstoppable. Sightings slowed down after that, but they never stopped. Taxi drivers, hunters, farmers, even some famous people swore they saw something jumping across roads or flying between trees. But no photos, no captures, no evidence. Every weird footprint turned out to be a dog, or a horse, or just a bored teen playing a prank. So what is the Jersey Devil? Scientists say it's just a legend. Probably people mistaking cranes, owls, or deer in the dark, or straight up making stuff up for attention, or to scare their little cousins at camp. No bones, no photos, no proof. New Jersey's all in on this thing. There's a Jersey Devil Festival, a museum, even a pro hockey team named after it. People sell t-shirts, carve pumpkins, and retell the story every Halloween like it's gospel. Just a story that refuses to die. That's the real power of the Jersey Devil. Beast of Bray Road, Wisconsin's werewolf. Just like Jersey Devil, this one starts with you driving at night. But this time, your headlights catch a literal werewolf, standing by the ditch, 7 feet tall, covered in thick gray-brown fur. It has a wolf's snout, pointed ears, and glowing eyes that flash red, orange, or bright yellow in the dark. That's the Beast of Bray Road, Wisconsin's most famous cryptid. Most people call it a werewolf, or dogman. They say it walks on 2 legs, but sometimes the beast drops to all 4s and runs like a giant wolf. But where did this wolfman come from? And why do so many people swear they saw it? The first story goes back to 1936, when a night watchman saw a huge wolf-like creature digging on a burial mound. It stood up, locked eyes with him, and then chased him through the field. That story stuck around, but the legend really took off in the late 1980s and early 90s. People started calling in sightings. Livestock showed up dead, organs missing. Drivers said their cars had claw marks, and a few claimed something jumped onto the hood or roof. A local reporter, Linda Godfrey, started collecting the stories for the newspaper. She was skeptical at first, but after hearing from dozens of people who seemed genuinely scared, she wondered if something was out there. The beast blew up into a local legend. Books, documentaries, even a cheesy horror movie came out. People called it Man-Wolf, Dogman, or just the Beast. It became the star of Hollywood haunted hayrides and scary campfire stories. So what's the truth behind the beast? Most scientists and wildlife experts aren't convinced. Wisconsin has real wolves, and it's full of big dogs, coyotes, and even the occasional bear. Some think the beast is just a big animal seen at night, or maybe even an escaped exotic pet. A few sightings might be outright hoaxes or the work of pranksters, because someone once scared teens in a wolf mask for laughs. Every time someone finds a weird footprint or hears a growl, the legend grows. There are some pretty wild stories out there, though. One woman in the 80s said she hit something with her car, then looked back to see a wolfman clinging to the trunk, scratching deep grooves in the metal. Another said the creature leapt on her hood and stared at her with glowing eyes. People talk about finding 12-inch long footprints and catching whiffs of a rotten meat smell hanging in the air. But even after all the stories, no clear photos, no bodies, no fur, no DNA. Just a lot of spook locals and late-night horror story time. So why do so many people keep seeing the Beast of Bray Road? Maybe it's the dark roads, the thick woods, and the way fear can turn a glimpse of fur or a weird shadow into a monster. Maybe it's just a good story, one that makes you roll up your windows and lock your doors when you drive through Elkhorn at night. For now, the Beast of Bray Road is a local legend, part of Wisconsin's weird history. If you ever drive down that stretch after midnight, keep your eyes peeled. You might see a flash of fur in the headlights, or maybe, if you're lucky or unlucky, you'll spot those glowing eyes staring right back at you. And if chasing down blurry cryptids at 3 a.m. sounds like your idea of fun, maybe it's time to give your brain something a little more concrete to solve. That's where Brilliant comes in. Today's sponsor. Brilliant is a learning platform that actually levels up how you think. With thousands of interactive lessons in science, math, data, programming, and logic. Instead of passively watching lectures and hoping it sticks, Brilliant lets you learn by doing. Each lesson is packed with hands-on problem solving that builds understanding from the ground up, which studies show is up to 6 times more effective than just watching videos. I've been using it between script edits and cryptid rabbit holes, and recently I've been hooked on their scientific thinking course. It teaches you how to break big, messy questions into smaller, testable parts, which, yeah, kind of helps when the internet's arguing whether nightcrawlers are aliens, ghosts, or just a pair of sentient pants. Lessons are bite-sized, visual, and surprisingly satisfying. No jargon walls either, no filler, just real thinking practice that sticks with you. You can try Brilliant for free at brilliant.org/quackdoc, and if you like it, you'll get 20% off an annual premium membership for unlimited access. That's brilliant.org/quackdoc, or scan the code on screen. Links in the description too, because cryptids might not be real, but thinking better definitely is. Bunyip. What would you do if you saw huge bubbles rising in a dark swamp, then heard a roar that sounded too deep for any animal, and then a creature that's slippery, hairy, loud, and just mysterious enough to keep you awake at night, just stares at you from the swamp. That's the Bunyip, a creature feared in Australia for generations. But here's the thing, nobody agrees on what the Bunyip actually looks like. Some stories, especially from Aboriginal people, make it sound otherworldly. One old tale describes the Bunyip as an enormous starfish with arms reaching out from the mud. But in most stories, it's more like a seal mixed with a dog, about as long as a grown man, with dark fur, big eyes, and a roar that shakes the whole swamp. Other times, the Bunyip turns into something even weirder. A giant animal with a tiny horse head, a super long neck, and folds of loose, leathery skin. A few versions say it has a dog's face and a tail like a horse, and it can walk on land or swim underwater. But the one thing everyone agrees on is that the Bunyip lives in deep, muddy water, like swamps, rivers, and billabongs where you can't see what's beneath the surface. It's supposed to come out at night and hunt for crayfish. Sometimes, if you believe the scarier stories, for anyone who gets too close to the edge. Aboriginal stories often use the Bunyip as a warning. Don't go near the water alone, or the Bunyip will get you. In some Dreamtime stories, the Bunyip punishes people who break natural laws like catching too many fish, disturbing sacred places, or wandering where they shouldn't. So where did the legend start? It's ancient. The word Bunyip comes from languages in southeastern Australia, but every region had its own name for swamp spirits. When Europeans arrived in the 1800s, they started hearing Bunyip stories from local guides. At first, settlers brushed it off as superstition, but that all changed in 1845, when a strange set of giant bones was found near a river in Victoria. Aboriginal witnesses told the newspapers these belonged to a Bunyip. Within a year, a Bunyip skull turned up on the banks of the Murrumbidgee River. It was put on display in Sydney, and crowds lined up to see the monster's head. For weeks, the city buzzed with Bunyip mania. Newspaper headlines, sketches of the beast, and wild stories about monster attacks. Of course, scientists quickly pointed out that the skull was just from a young cow. But that didn't matter. The Bunyip was officially a celebrity. People started seeing it everywhere, in creeks, marshes, and muddy lakes. William Buckley, an escaped convict who lived with Aboriginal people for decades, swore he saw a Bunyip with a feathered back in the marshes, and that the locals believed it had magic powers. As for what the Bunyip really was, people have guessed everything, from seals that swam upriver to giant extinct animals, like the Diprotodon, basically a rhino-sized wombat, to the weird calls of marsh birds echoing over the water at night. Some researchers even think that the Bunyip was just a way to keep kids from wandering too close to the water. But like every cryptid ever, nobody ever caught one. Every supposed Bunyip track belonged to a normal animal. The only real evidence is fear and a lot of campfire stories. Chupacabra, the goat sucker. Imagine stepping outside on a humid night and finding your goats, chickens, or rabbits dead in the dirt, with twin puncture marks on their necks, and not a drop of blood left in their bodies. That's when you start to hear the word Chupacabra, or the goat sucker. But what does a Chupacabra even look like? That depends on who you ask. The original stories from 1995 in Puerto Rico described it as a creature standing as tall as a teenager, walking on two legs, with gray or greenish skin, red glowing eyes, and a row of spines down its back. It was said to hop like a kangaroo and smell really bad, kind of like rotten eggs and wet dog mixed together. After the Puerto Rico panic, the story spread everywhere. News reports, radio hosts, and local legends all picked up the name. The creature started popping up across Latin America and even in the southern United States. But this isn't the only version people have seen. People in Texas, for example, saw four-legged animals, like skinny, hairless dogs or coyotes. These chupacabras were usually small, with patchy skin, sharp teeth, and big ears. They limped around on all fours and looked sick and hungry, not like the monster from the old drawings. So why did the story change? Here's where scientists stepped in. Experts studied the bodies of these so-called chupacabras and found something simple. They were just regular dogs or coyotes with a skin disease called mange. Mange makes animals lose their fur and look bony, with tough, crusty skin. When you see one at night, it's easy to let your mind turn it into a monster. And then there's the media. News channels, cartoons, t-shirts, even sandwiches all started using the chupacabra name. Every time a rancher found dead animals, the legend grew. One time, a radio station even sent a guy into the woods wearing a goat costume, just to see what would happen. But even with all this hype, nobody has found real proof. No bones, no bodies, no clear photos. Even the so-called bloodless kills turned out to be typical predator attacks. Coyotes often go for the neck, and postmortem blood settling can make animals look drained, but autopsies don't support any actual blood sucking. There have been a few hoaxes too. People have faked tracks, doctored photos, and made up wild stories just for attention. Even viral videos in recent years, like the blurry footage from Texas or South America, always end up being sick dogs, coyotes, or sometimes raccoons. In the end, the Chupacabra is a modern myth. It's an answer people turn to when something strange happens on the farm, or when they want to share a scary story. There's no real monster behind it, just fear, imagination, and maybe a sick coyote on a dark road. But hey, sometimes the story is the best part. And if you think this goatsucker's mutant dogs are scary, wait till you hear about the ones in Ireland. They're in the water, and if you piss them off, they'll chase you all the way to the edge of the earth. Dobhar-chu, Ireland. The name comes from Irish Gaelic. Dobh meaning water, and hu means dog. So it literally means water dog. But what people described was much more frightening than a soggy retriever. According to most accounts, the Dobhar-chu looked like a giant otter crossed with a dog. It was usually said to be 6 or 7 feet long, about as big as a grown crocodile. Some people described it as having slick dark fur that was almost black, while others said it was white with patches or stripes. Its body was muscular and built low to the ground, with a long tail and webbed paws, perfect for swimming. The head was sometimes described as more dog-like than otter, with a strong jaw and big teeth. In some old stories, its skin was slimy or smooth, and its eyes were dark and glaring. But the Dobhar-chu was more than just scary looking. In Irish folklore, it was a killer. The monster supposedly lived in remote lakes and rivers, lurking near the water's edge. It would attack people who got too close, sometimes dragging them under or leaping from the water to kill them on the shore. A common warning in old stories was that the Dobhar-chu hunted in pairs. If you killed one, its mate would appear and hunt you down. There are stories of farmers, fishermen, and even children being snatched or found dead after swimming or playing near lonely lows. The most famous Dobhar-chu story comes from County Leitrim, at Glenadlow, in the early 1700s. The legend says that a woman named Grace McLaughlin, sometimes called Grace Connolly, which I don't know which is true, was washing clothes by the lake when a Dobhar-chu killed her. Her husband Terence tracked it down and killed it with a spear. According to some versions, the monster's mate then chased Terence for miles until he killed that one too. The story became so well known locally that when Grace was buried, her gravestone showed a carving of a dog otter with a spear in its neck, and it became a unique bit of cryptid evidence that still stands in the graveyard today. The gravestone shows a large creature, sprawled on its back, with big paws and a hound-like head, just as the stories describe. Written records of the Dobhar-chu go back even further. In the late 1600s, the historian Roderick O'Flaherty wrote about a beast at Lough Mask, calling it an Irish crocodile that looked like a slimy greyhound. He described it as having fish-like skin and no noticeable hair. In later years, the Dobhar-chu legend spread throughout Western Ireland. Some people claimed to see enormous otters in lakes or rivers. A few even described fights with the monster. Newspapers and amateur cryptozoologists in the 1800s and 1900s published stories about giant otters seen in Mayo, Galway, and Donegal, but none were ever caught or proven real. Modern scientists don't believe the Dobhar-chu is a real animal. There are several reasons for this. First, Ireland does have otters, but they're small and not dangerous to humans. No large otter, wolf otter, or mysterious aquatic dog has ever been captured, killed, or even photographed in Ireland. The supposed evidence, like Grace's gravestone, proves only that people believed the legend, not that the animal existed. Some researchers think that the Dobhar-chu was a way for people to explain drownings or mysterious deaths in wild places. Others say that a rare aggressive otter or even a misidentified seal could have started the stories. Another idea is that the Dobhar-chu legend is part of a bigger group of water monster tales found in Ireland and Scotland. For example, the Scottish Kelpie or Iach Uisge is also a water beast that drags people to their doom. In Ireland, the Dobhar-chu fits the bill. It's an animal you already know, a dog or otter, but bigger, meaner, and magical. There have been a few supposed sightings in modern times, but none have ever been proven. One artist in 2003 claimed to see a black otter-like creature with orange flippers off the coast of Omi Island. Another report in 2023 claimed video evidence of a large otter-shaped animal in Connemara, but the footage was too blurry to confirm anything. Most recent evidence is just stories passed along on the internet, retold in books about Irish monsters. Today, the Dobhar-chu lives on in local legend, tourism, and Irish pop culture. You can visit the Glenade grave, read about the story on travel blogs, or watch short documentaries about the Irish waterhound. Local museums, history tours, and even a few pubs have embraced the story as part of their heritage. But there's no ongoing search for the creature, and wildlife experts say that if a giant otter ever did live in Ireland, it's been extinct for thousands of years. Mongolian deathworm. If you love Dune, this is for you. Mongolia basically has their own Arrakis and its own Shai Hulud, but in the real world, it's called the Mongolian deathworm, or Olgoy-Korokoi. First, the visuals. Locals say the worm is about the length of your arm, sometimes even longer, thick as a soda can, and colored an intense bloody red. I know, it's not as big as you expect. Its skin is sometimes leathery, sometimes slick, and the whole thing moves by wriggling or sliding just under the surface, like a living intestine. Some reports describe a pair of spikes or horns on either end, and a mouth full of tiny, sharp teeth. When threatened, this thing is supposed to spit acid that melts flesh, or even zap you with an electric shock. The deadliest part? According to legend, you don't even have to touch it. Get too close and it can kill you with just a look. Even though I'm not sure where worm eyes are placed. But is there really something lurking beneath the dunes? No pun intended. Or is the deathworm just another story that grew legs and fangs in the telling? The legend goes way back, passed down by Mongolian nomads as a warning about wandering the dunes alone. Before the 20th century, hardly anyone outside Mongolia had heard of the deathworm. That changed in the 1920s, when American explorer Roy Chapman Andrews went looking for dinosaur fossils, and heard local tales about a bright red worm, thick as a man's arm and deadly at a touch. Mongolians warned him that even talking about the Olgoy-Korokoi was dangerous. Andrews never saw the creature himself, but his book helped launch the deathworm's international reputation as the Gobi's most infamous monster. As the story spread, the deathworm got new details. Some said it could kill camels just by spitting at them, or that its body would change color when it was angry. In the 1990s, cryptozoologists and thrill seekers trekked through the desert, armed with cameras and homemade traps. A few even tried setting off vibrations or explosions to lure it out of the sand, but every search ended the same way. No worm, no tracks, no acid pools, just miles of empty sand and some great stories to bring home. So what's behind the legend? Scientists are blunt. There's no known animal like this in the Gobi Desert, and no body has ever turned up. Some herpetologists think people are seeing regular sand boas, harmless brownish snakes that burrow and only show up after it rains. When one was shown to local herders, many agreed it looked just like the deathworm they'd heard about. Others guess it might be a legless lizard, or that stories of deadly snake bites or sand accidents mutated over time into something much scarier. A few diehards float theories about surviving prehistoric monsters or even alien creatures, but with zero proof to back them up. Every expedition, documentary, and scientific search has come back with nothing. Not a single worm body, not a reliable photograph, just word of mouth and legends shared around campfires. Most local Mongolians treat the deathworm the same way Westerners treat dragons or Bigfoot. It's fun to talk about, but nobody really expects to see one. In fact, even the classic deathworm photos you see online are always fakes. Sticks, hoses, clever Photoshop jobs, or sometimes just ropes tossed in the sand for a prank. Still, the legend keeps growing. It's a staple of cryptid lists, and every year, a few new sightings pop up, though never with any real evidence. Even tourists can buy deathworm souvenirs in Gobi getaway towns. Alright, enough for killer cryptids for now. Our next entry is actually kinda cute. At least from what I think. It doesn't kill, doesn't harass anyone, just chillin'. It's the Fresno Nightcrawler. If you want to see the weirdest creature ever caught on a home security camera, meet the Fresno Nightcrawler. People call it the walking pants monster. That sounds like a joke, but the first time anyone saw it, nobody was laughing. It all happened late at night in Fresno, California, back in 2007. Jose, a local man, was worried about people sneaking into his yard, so he set up an old security camera. One night, his dog started barking like crazy. Jose got out of bed, probably annoyed, and checked his TV monitor, expecting to see a raccoon or maybe a teenager cutting across the lawn. What he saw instead looked like something from another planet. On the black and white camera, two shapes walked slowly across the grass. It had two very long, thin legs that seemed to glide across the lawn. There was a small bump on top, maybe a head, maybe just part of the legs, but no arms, no body, no face, nothing you'd expect to see on a living thing. The legs were pale white and seemed to move without bending much, almost like stilts in a puppet show. The second Nightcrawler was even smaller, following the first like a shadow. Neither creature made a sound. They just walked straight through the yard, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Jose couldn't believe what he was seeing. He played the tape again and again. He even brought in a Spanish TV station, hoping someone could explain it. The TV host, Victor Camacho, brought cameras and experts, but nobody could say for sure what those things were. When the footage went on the news, people all over Fresno started talking. Some thought it was a hoax. Others wondered if it was an alien. But the video didn't show wires, costumes, or any obvious tricks. You could feel the tension in the city. People were curious, but also a little scared, because nobody knew what those things really were. A few years later, another strange video popped up, this time from Yosemite National Park. A security camera there showed two tall, skinny white figures, just like the first one, gliding through the trees at night. Their legs moved in the same smooth way, almost floating across the ground. Again, there were no arms, no faces, just those odd white legs moving quietly through the dark. Some people thought these new Nightcrawlers looked even more unreal than the ones in Fresno. Ever since that, more and more stories have popped up online. One person in Ohio said they saw a very tall, gray, armless creature cross the road late at night. That one was bigger and ran much faster, but the shape was still weirdly similar. Other internet users claimed to see Nightcrawlers in faraway places, but most of those are just stories with no real proof. So what are these things? Some say the Nightcrawler is an alien, sent to Earth to watch us or collect samples. Others think it's a ghost or a creature from another world that can appear and disappear when it wants. Skeptics believe it's a prank, a puppet, a kid in pants, or a computer trick. TV investigators tried to recreate the video using puppets and special effects, but they couldn't get it to look exactly right. The way the Nightcrawler glides is just too smooth and creepy. What's weird is that the Nightcrawler doesn't do anything scary. It doesn't chase people, make noise, or hurt animals. It just walks by, minding its own business, and then vanishes. There are no footprints left behind, no fur, no broken branches. Still, the Fresno Nightcrawler has become famous all over the world. People make drawings, cartoons, and even plush dolls of the creature. There's a statue of it at a local Fresno art trail. Every Halloween, someone dresses up as the Nightcrawler, shuffling down the street with long white pants and a hoodie. It's become a kind of mascot for Fresno. Even now, nobody has proved what the Nightcrawler is. The original witness, Jose, never said he faked it, and nobody else has come forward to confess. The videos keep popping up on TV shows and websites, and people still argue about whether it's real or just a really good trick. Mokele-Mbembe, Congo River Basin, Africa. The Mokele-Mbembe is Africa's most famous living dinosaur. But the truth behind this legend is a lot muddier than the swamps it's supposed to live in. Let's start with what people say they've seen. According to locals along the Congo River Basin, the Mokele-Mbembe is as big as an elephant or a hippo. People say it has a long, flexible neck, kind of like a brachiosaurus, smooth, gray or reddish skin, and sometimes a single horn or tooth sticking out from its snout. Most say it walks on 4 legs, and its tail is either thick like an alligator or not mentioned at all, depending on who you ask. No one ever reports fur. The creature is usually described as shy but powerful. It supposedly eats only plants and spends its days lurking in rivers, occasionally tipping over boats and scaring off anyone who gets too close. Some villagers claim it kills people who bother it, but it doesn't eat them. It just disappears back under the water, leaving broken canoes and terrified fishermen behind. There are lots of small differences in the details, but all the stories agree on one thing. The Mokele-Mbembe is huge, weird looking, and doesn't belong with the rest of Africa's wildlife. For a lot of people, it sounds exactly like a dinosaur that somehow survived to modern times. The outside world didn't hear about the Mokele-Mbembe until 1913, when a German explorer named Ludwig von Stein traveled through what's now the Republic of Congo. He wrote that locals described a monster with a long neck, huge body, and a single horn that was big enough to flip over a boat. His story got picked up in Europe, and by the 1930s, cryptozoology books were treating Mokele-Mbembe like proof that dinosaurs could still be out there. But this creature really went viral in the 1980s. Roy McCall, a biologist from the University of Chicago, led a couple of famous expeditions to Lake Tele and the Likoala Swamp. He interviewed dozens of villagers, collected footprints, and listened to story after story about the giant river beast. McCall and his team even thought they saw something moving in the water a few times, but every photo and footprint they found turned out to be inconclusive, or belonged to something already known, like a hippo or elephant. Still, McCall's book, A Living Dinosaur, turned the Mokele-Mbembe into a global cryptid superstar. After that, the legend appeared in documentaries, magazines, and even church pamphlets, with some creationists using it as evidence against evolution. In 1983, a Congolese zoologist named Marcelin Agnagne claimed he saw the creature himself. He described a reddish head with eyes poking above the water. Japanese TV crews in 1987 filmed what looked like a neck and head moving in Lake Tele. But skeptics later said it was probably just two fishermen in a canoe. One, Redmond O'Hanlon, spent months in the swamps, but decided the whole thing was probably a case of mistaken identity. People were seeing elephants wading across rivers, with their trunks raised like a long neck. That would look pretty strange through the mist, especially from far away. So what could the Mokele-Mbembe really be? Scientists have a few ideas. The most popular one is that it's a combination of stories about known animals, hippos, elephants, and especially black rhinos. Black rhinos used to live in that part of Africa, and they're big, gray, with a single horn, and sometimes wade through rivers. The hippo's huge body and aggressive nature might have helped fuel the scarier parts of the story, like attacking boats. Some people even think giant monitor lizards or crocodiles could explain parts of the legend. But there's another layer to all this. Over time, as Western explorers and missionaries traveled deeper into Africa, they brought their own ideas about dinosaurs. Local people might have started describing the river monster as more dinosaur-like because that's what the outsiders wanted to hear. In the 20th century, explorers and creationists offered money or gifts to anyone who had a good story. Sometimes that means villagers gave answers that sounded more exciting, or drew pictures based on what they'd seen in books, not real life. A few people have tried to fake evidence too. In the 1990s, a British explorer named Rory Nugent took a fuzzy photo of something in the water that looked almost like a head and neck, but experts later said it was just a log. Other expeditions brought back casts of footprints, but scientists who studied them said they matched elephants or hippos, not dinosaurs. No expedition has ever found bones, teeth, skin, or droppings that belonged to anything unknown. Local trackers, when shown photos of hippos or rhinos, would often say, "Yes, that's the Mokele-Mbembe," which shows how blurry the line is between real animals and the legend. In the end, every serious investigation by scientists, journalists, or local guides has come up empty. The Congo Basin is huge, muddy, and hard to search, but it's hard to believe a giant dinosaur could hide for so long without leaving real evidence. No bodies have washed up. No remains have ever turned up in village markets or animal traps. Even so, the Mokele-Mbembe refuses to die. It still pops up on TV shows and cryptid websites, and every few years there's a new rumor about a sighting. Sometimes people blame this on deforestation, more people moving through the wild areas, seeing hippos or elephants for the first time, and getting a good scare. There's something kind of magical about this legend. Whether it's a real animal or not, the story has brought together villagers, explorers, scientists, and armchair adventurers from all over the world. By the way, dinosaurs in Africa aren't just in the Congo. There's another one in Zambia. This one attacks people in the water, but the difference is it's not an aquatic dinosaur. We'll talk about that in the next tier and entry. Tier 3. Less known cryptids. Kongamato. The Kongamato isn't some blurry shape you see out of the corner of your eye. People describe it as a straight-up prehistoric animal. Imagine a massive blood-red lizard with leathery wings that can reach 7 feet. It also has a long tail and a beak packed full of needle-sharp teeth. In fact, its name literally means breaker of boats, which, yeah, pretty much sums up their legend. You cross its river, and the next thing you know, something swoops down and flips you into the water. Some say just seeing this thing is enough to get you killed. Honestly, if a blood-red pterodactyl dive-bombed on my canoe, I'd drop dead on the spot too. This isn't just one tribe's ghost story either. The legend is baked into the culture across Zambia, Angola, and the Congo, especially around the Giundu swamps. The Kaonde people didn't think the Kongamato was a spirit or demon. To them, it was just a really terrible animal you had to look out for. Like, pack your anti-Kongamato charm levels of caution. And this wasn't some ancient myth that faded away. Western explorers picked up the story in the 1920s. Frank Meland, one of the early outsiders to write about it, showed villagers some dinosaur pictures. They didn't care about T-Rex or Triceratops, but as soon as he flashed a drawing of a pterosaur, the reaction was instant. That's it. That's the Kongamato. In the 1940s, a colonial game warden hears from the locals, if you see the Kongamato, start writing your will. He even found weird tracks in the mud, with drag marks that didn't fit any known animal. Decades later, travelers and biologists kept running into stories and sometimes very freaked out people who claimed they saw or barely survived an encounter. But here's the thing, there's no hard evidence. There's a blurry old photograph snapped by a British reporter in the 50s. It's about as convincing as a photo of Bigfoot. If Bigfoot had wings and the camera was shaking. Scientists rolled their eyes, but that hasn't stopped people from trying to find the beast. From the 1930s up to the late 1980s, naturalists and full-blown cryptid hunters trekked through the swamps, recording witness stories and snapping pictures of anything that even looked like a flying monster. The most they got was a handful of wild tales and maybe a scratch or two. So, what's actually going on? Modern researchers mostly chalk it up to mistaken identity. The region is home to some freaky birds, like the shoebill stork, a massive, gray, prehistoric-looking bird with a beak that could give you nightmares and wings that spread 8 feet. Sounds scary, but these birds have feathers, not scales, and none of them go around biting holes in boats. Other people suggest a giant bat, like the hammer-headed bat, but again, not a perfect match. The Kongamato is supposed to have a huge beak and be way bigger than any bat known to science. And yeah, some people, especially cryptozoologists, really want it to be a leftover pterosaur. The idea that a Jurassic Park reject is still gliding through African swamps is too tempting for cryptid hunters to give up. But bottom line, no skeletons, no verified sightings, and scientists aren't buying it. So next time you're canoeing through a Zambian swamp and the sun starts setting, maybe keep your eyes up and hope you don't see anything with leathery wings. Oh, and I've got another flying cryptid that loves causing chaos, but this time it's not a pterodactyl. It's something else entirely. Ahool. Alright, let's go deep into the jungle for this one. It's night in the rainforests of Java, and somewhere above you, something enormous just glided past the moon. That's when you hear it. 3 loud, bone-chilling cries. This is Ahool, Indonesia's most disturbing, oversized, human-faced bat. Let's get a good look at this nightmare. The Ahool is supposed to be a mix between a bat and, weirdly enough, a monkey. Imagine a toddler-sized bat-monkey hybrid with short gray fur and leathery wings stretching 12 feet across. That's twice the wingspan of the biggest bat you'll find anywhere else. And this isn't your basic bat face either. The Ahool's got these big, sad, almost human eyes, a flattened nose, a jaw that looks more primate than predator. Its feet point backwards when it's hanging in the trees. Creepy, but that's actually something real bats do. The locals swear it flies silently, then drops down to snatch fish out of rivers with its claws. Sometimes people claim it goes after small animals, or, every once in a while, even people. The story really took off back in the 1920s, when Dr. Ernst Bartels, a respected naturalist, started hanging out in Java's wild valleys. In 1925, he spotted something huge flapping over a waterfall, but it disappeared before he could get a good look. 2 years later, while he was trying to sleep, the silence exploded with that Ahool cry echoing above his hut. Bartels jumped out of bed, flashlight in hand, but whatever made that noise was already gone. He knew every animal in those woods, and this wasn't any of them. His report became the Ahool's claim to cryptid fame. Over time, other villagers started telling their own stories. Shadows gliding through the moonlight, trees shaking as something massive took off, or just the weird spine-tingling cries in the dark. So, do we have proof? Not really. Just Bartel's story, plus a bunch of locals who swear by the legend. There are no bones, no photos, no giant bat wing nailed to someone's wall. In most cases, people see a big shadow or hear the call, and their imagination does the rest. Scientists have pointed out that the jungle's dark, your mind's racing, and a regular-sized animal suddenly looks way bigger than it really is. Plus, Bartel's an ear witness account. He only heard the cry, never the creature. It means this could be a classic case of mistaken identity. If you ever want a rational answer, here's the best guess. It's probably an owl. The Javan wood owl has a big wingspan, flat monkey-like face, and a super loud cry that actually sounds kind of like Ahool. If you get buzzed by an angry owl at midnight, your mind's going to fill in the gaps with something monstrous. The wings are silent, the eyes glow red in the dark, and if you're really unlucky, it'll even dive bomb you to protect its nest. That could explain a lot of the stories, except for, the whole 12-foot wingspan thing. Some cryptozoologists like Carl Schuker think it could be a mystery bat, maybe even a new species that science just hasn't caught up with yet. But bats this big would be impossible to miss, and they sure wouldn't be sneaking around for decades without anyone snapping a photo. The Ahool is what you get when local fear meets jungle noise and imagination does the rest. No creatures, no bones, but the stories won't shut up. Maybe there's something out there, still waiting to be discovered. Loveland Frog. Alright, imagine this. You're driving down a dark, half-empty road just outside Loveland, Ohio. It's late, you're tired. Suddenly, something jumps out from the weeds. You slow down, you rub your eyes, and there it is. A 4-foot-tall frog standing on 2 legs. Just chilling by the guardrail like it's waiting for the bus. This is the legend of the Loveland Frog, or as the locals call it, the Frogman. If you've never heard the story, you're probably thinking, wait, so a frog walks like a human, and it's the size of a kid? Yeah, that's the whole point. Witnesses all agree it's not a regular frog. It stands upright, has scaly, leathery skin, and usually a slimy shade of green or gray. The face is all frog, with big bulging eyes, a wide mouth, and sometimes those weird fleshy ridges or fake horns on top. Its fingers and toes are webbed, and it walks around with a stubby torso and, depending on the sighting, no real tail. Basically, if a giant toad started cosplaying as Bigfoot, this is what you get. The whole thing starts way back in 1955. There's this traveling salesman cruising through Loveland late at night. He claims he sees not 1, but 3 of these things. They're squatting by the side of the road. Frog faces, spiny backs, just standing there like it's beer night. Oh, and one's waving around a spark-shooting wand, because apparently being a mutant amphibian wasn't weird enough. Nobody even really checks out this story, and it mostly just sits in the rumor bin. Then you get to 1972, and things get wild. Officer Ray Shockey, Loveland Police, says he's driving near the boot factory at 1 in the morning. He sees a frog-shaped, child-sized animal crouched by the curb. He stops. The thing stands up on 2 legs, then vaults over the guardrail. 2 weeks later, another cop, Mark Matthews, finds the same thing, except this time he's not taking chances. Matthews shoots it. When he checks the body, surprise, he says it's just a massive iguana, like 3 feet long, tail missing, probably half frozen. He takes it to Shockey and they both shrug. End of story, right? Nope. The iguana detail somehow gets lost in the retelling, and suddenly, Loveland Frogman is all over Ohio. Everyone's cousin knows a guy who saw it. Artists are drawing their own versions, and by the 2010s, the legend just won't die. In 2016, a couple playing Pokemon Go claims they got video proof. Local news runs with it. Internet goes nuts. Experts step in, take one look, and it turns out, yeah, that's a plastic lawn ornament floating in the creek. Every time someone tries to nail this thing down, reality ruins the party. Officer Matthews, yep, the original shooter, comes out in interviews and just flat out says it. Not a cryptid, not a monster. Just a sickly iguana. He even explains how the local pet trade means iguanas escape all the time. And maybe this one just lucked out in the warm runoff from a nearby factory. Skeptics also suggest maybe it was a deer or someone's imagination. That should have killed the legend. But instead, the story took on a life of its own. There's never been a real photo, not a single footprint, and definitely no body. Just stories, old police notes, and a city that now parades a frogman mascot at festivals like it's totally normal. You'd think that debunking would kill the hype, but honestly, the Loveland Frog just gets weirder. People write musicals about it, chase fake videos, and hunt for frogmen every summer. At this point, it's more of a regional in-joke than a real cryptid hunt. So next time you're driving through Loveland and see something lumpy leap over a guardrail, relax. It's probably just a plastic frog. Or, you know, an iguana. Kalanoro, Madagascar cave or forest spirit. The Kalanoro is a creature from the deep forests and caves of Madagascar, one of those rare cryptids whose roots run much older than the internet. In the stories, the Kalanoro are tiny, hairy people, usually less than a meter tall, with wild, tangled hair covering their whole bodies. They have extra long fingernails, sharp claws, and their feet are famously backward, meaning the heels point forward and the toes point back. This detail shows up again and again in village tales, and is supposed to make them very tricky to track in the wild. People say they only have 3 clawed toes, and when the light is low, their eyes glow red in the darkness. Some locals describe Kalanoro as looking like little hairy men or women sitting near cave fires, with long beards for males and long hair for both. And it's not just about how they look. Some stories say the females love to swim, splashing through rivers during the rainy season. They're also linked to magic. Kalanoro can supposedly pass on healing secrets or taboos to humans, and some villagers will call on them through a medium for help with illness, fertility, or missing children. Their voices, if you hear them through a medium, sound high and childlike. In other stories, they play a darker role. Sometimes they snatch children, curse villages, or act as spirits of the dead. A lot of Malagasy people connect them to the Vazimba, the legendary first people of Madagascar, believing that the Kalanoro are either their ghosts or related to them somehow. The idea of the Kalanoro isn't something new. Anthropologists and explorers have been writing about them for over 100 years. Back in 1886, a British traveler described villagers who talked about a wild man, small and hairy, that sometimes warmed itself by their fires. There's even an old story of explorers supposedly catching a Kalanoro, but historians checked and couldn't find any real proof. Most reports like that are now seen as tall tales. So where did this legend come from? Some scientists think the Kalanoro myth may be a memory of extinct animals. Madagascar once had big ground-dwelling lemurs that looked a bit like furry little people, and maybe villagers, centuries later, remembered them as spirits in the forest. Others say the Kalanoro legend is part of a bigger pattern. Many cultures around the world have stories of small, hairy wildfolk hiding in the woods. There's also the possibility that the word Kalanoro comes from old local languages, or from German, meaning something like fast ghost. But even with all these ideas, nobody has ever found a Kalanoro bone, body, or real scientific evidence. Today, the Kalanoro is still very much a part of Malagasy culture. Most reports are secondhand or come from rituals and ceremonies, not from anyone actually seeing a Kalanoro up close. Anthropologists studying the island write about how the Kalanoro shapes village life. If a child goes missing or a crop fails, some people say it was the work of a Kalanoro, and rituals may be held to make peace. Farmers sometimes avoid cutting down trees or hunting in places said to be Kalanoro territory. In this way, the legend helps protect certain parts of the forest, acting almost like a guardian spirit that keeps humans from overusing the land. Tier 4. Internet Era Entity. Mountain creature caught running behind Google's Street View car, or MoCC. A Google Street View car bumps along a quiet mountain road in British Columbia, snapping pictures for maps. It's just another day of endless trees, rocks, and winding pavement. But then, in a single blurry frame from 2018, something shows up behind the car. Something weird. Something that definitely doesn't look like a tree. If you zoom in, all you get is a fuzzy brown blob, lurking off the shoulder of Duffy Lake Road. But internet imaginations have a way of running wild. Pretty soon, artists and Reddit sleuths decided they were looking at a short, chunky creature about 3 or 4 feet tall, with smooth, light skin, no visible arms, and a long tubular body that looks like it belongs on a giant salamander or newt. Some people draw MoCC with a wide, frog-like mouth and round, staring eyes. Others add ridged spines down its back, or make it squat like a little dinosaur. Everyone agrees on one thing. It's armless, awkward, and definitely not a bear. In other words, nobody really knows what MoCC is supposed to be. The original image is so blurry it could be almost anything. An upended tree root, a hunched-over animal, or maybe just a muddy rock. But once the fan art started rolling in, MoCC became a lizard-like biped, a new cryptid for the digital age. The entire legend began in 2018, when a Reddit user posted the Google Street View image and asked, "What is that thing running behind the car?" Within days, Twitter and cryptid blogs exploded with theories and memes. MoCC instantly became a cryptid with its own nickname, a running joke on TikTok, and a canvas for digital artists. If you want to see the original scene, you can still find the spot by plugging 50, 19, 10 north and 122, 33, 45 west into Google Maps and scrolling back to the 2018 image set. Unlike almost every other cryptid out there, MoCC has no previous sightings, no centuries-old folklore, and no creepy bedtime stories. It's a creature that was born, lived, and mutated entirely in the fast-moving world of social media. It's not a local legend, just an internet meme that got out of hand. So what could it be? Let's be real, the Google photo is so pixelated, you could make a case for almost anything. Some people say it looks like a fallen log, or a beaver just out of the water. Others think it's an old tree stump, a bush at a weird angle, or a trick of the camera as the car zipped past. There's even a theory that the creature is actually part of a static object, with motion blur making it look alive as the camera car moves. The effect is called parallax, and it's a pretty common glitch in fast-moving panoramic images. So is there any other evidence? Short answer, nope. There's no clear video, no second sighting, no locals claiming to have seen a mountain lizard-like person wandering in the woods. All we have is a single blurry Google Street View photo, plus tons of jokes, stickers, and digital artwork. Some TikTok and YouTube videos retell the story, but they're just using the original image or fan art. Nobody has turned up any tracks, shed skin, or nighttime screeches that can't be explained by frogs, beavers, or the usual Canadian wildlife. Even cryptozoologists don't take MoCC very seriously. The story is too new, too tied to a single image, and way too meme-driven to count as a real legend. Ningen. The Ningen is a giant sea creature that comes straight from internet age legend. According to people who claim to have seen it, the Ningen is a huge pale humanoid, sometimes up to 20 or even 30 meters long, lurking in the cold waters near Antarctica. Most stories say it has smooth, milky white skin, and its body looks almost human if you squint. A torso, 2 arms, 2 legs, and sometimes even hands with 5 fingers. The head is usually round and simple, with tiny eyes and a slit for a mouth. No nose, no real face. Some versions say that the Ningen has more tentacle-like arms, or a body that looks more like a blobby seal. But the main thing is, it's enormous and extremely pale. Pretty much all the reported photos and videos of the Ningen are blurry, dark, or so vague you could be looking at a whale, an iceberg, or even a patch of ice in weird light. There are no clear pictures, and nobody has ever captured a Ningen or found a body. Even the best proof online is usually just a shadowy shape underwater or a white lump sticking out of the sea. Sometimes someone posts a Google Earth image that's supposed to show a Ningen near Antarctica, but every time, experts or curious fans point out it's just a chunk of ice or a digital glitch. What makes the Ningen different from older sea monster tales is that it's a completely modern story. The first sightings only appeared online in the mid-2000s. Japanese internet forums like 2channel were full of anonymous posts claiming that whalers or government research ships had seen a mysterious white creature in the Southern Ocean. In the most famous version, a whaling crew saw something so big they first thought it was a submarine, then realized it was a pale, human-like creature floating just beneath the surface. The Ningen legend really took off after a 2007 article in Japan's Mew magazine, which covered strange creatures and paranormal stuff. They ran the story and printed out a supposed satellite image of a white thing in the ocean, supposedly a Ningen, but probably just a bad photo or a joke. After that, the idea went viral online, with people swapping sightings, sharing creepy art, and making YouTube videos or blog posts about the Antarctic humanoid. Scientists and skeptics have weighed in on the Ningen, but not in a flattering way. All serious researchers says there's no evidence for any real creature. Biologists point out that there are albino whales, seals, and big jellyfish in southern waters, any of which could look spooky from a distance or at night. Icebergs, especially ones that roll or break, can take weird shapes, and if you're out at sea for weeks, you might start to see faces and arms where there are none. This trick of the mind is called pareidolia, and it explains why people spot eyes or human features in clouds, wood grain, or ice. A few more creative explanations have popped up too. Some people say that the Ningen is a symbol of Japan's uneasy feelings about its whaling program, sort of a modern sea ghost, invented to haunt ships in an age when whaling is controversial. But the bottom line is, there's no real evidence. Every photo, every video, every supposed leak is either a misidentified animal, a floating chunk of ice, or just straight up internet storytelling. Despite this, the Ningen has become a small pop culture star. The creature shows up in manga, horror comics, YouTube documentaries, and plenty of blog posts. Cryptid fans have made it part of the online pantheon, right alongside Bigfoot and Nessie, but with a colder and more ghostly vibe. Goatman. If you've ever driven down a lonely back road at night and suddenly gotten the urge to roll up your windows, maybe you need to lock the doors because you're not alone. If you're anywhere near Prince George's County, Maryland, there's a good reason for that. People around here have been swapping stories for decades about the Goatman. Let's set the scene. The Goatman is a nightmare mashup, a 7-foot-tall monster, body like a linebacker covered in wiry, dark fur, legs ending in cloven hooves, and a head that's part man, part goat, with thick horns curling up from its skull. Some people say its face is basically a man with a beard and slitted pupils. Others go with a full goat face with an elongated snout and all. Either way, it's not something you want to meet in the woods. And then there's the axe. Yeah, an axe. A lot of Maryland tales have the Goatman lurking around with a hatchet, supposedly left over from a backstory involving mad scientists and lab escapes. But the thing people remember most is the sound. Supposedly, the Goatman's shriek is this blood-curdling mix of a human scream and a goat's dying wail. Witnesses say it echoes through the trees just before the thing shows up, almost like it's warning you, or maybe just messing with you for fun. It's territorial, it's aggressive, and according to more than a few local teens from the 70s, it doesn't mind chasing cars or smashing windshields if you get too close. Got a pet in the neighborhood that disappeared? The legend probably blames Goatman for that too. Of course, Goatman isn't just a Maryland thing. There's the Pope Lick monster in Kentucky that supposedly haunts a train trestle and lures people onto the tracks. Texas has its own version lurking around the old Alton Bridge. Different details, same basic aura. Half man, half goat, and a reputation for terrorizing anyone who gets brave or stupid enough to look for it. The Maryland version really exploded in the early 70s, right after a family dog turned up dead and decapitated not far from Fletchertown Road. The media jumped all over it. Stories about a hairy, axe-wielding creature started popping up everywhere. Teens dared each other to hunt Goatman at the infamous Crybaby Bridge, and just about every unexplained scratch on a car or a strange noise in the dark got chalked up to the monster. There are a bunch of origin stories. The most famous one says the Goatman was created in a genetics lab gone wrong, with a scientist either transforming himself or accidentally making a goat-human hybrid that escaped into the woods, never to be caught. Another version has him as a deranged hermit, some unlucky goat farmer who went mad and started attacking trespassers. And if you go way back, there are even echoes of old myths like satyrs, fauns, and demons. The kind of stuff you definitely don't want following you home. But if you're hoping for real proof, you're out of luck. No bones, no fur, no blurry photos worth a second look. What we have are stories. Teens claiming to see glowing eyes in the brush, couples being chased on lovers' lanes, and a lot of pet owners with scary campfire tales. Most researchers chalk it up to misidentifications, pranks, or just the power of a good story in a small town. Still, every so often, Goatman fever made a comeback, usually after some new sighting, or just because people want to test their nerve at a haunted bridge. It's become a rite of passage for local kids and a favorite for TV specials and Halloween attractions. You won't find the Goatman in any biology book, but if you ask around Prince George's County, someone's bound to have a cousin or a friend of a friend who swears they've seen him. So yeah, that's the bottom of this iceberg. No proof, just stories, sightings, weird footprints that go nowhere. Doesn't matter if it's swamp dragons, giant bats, or some goat-headed guy screaming in the woods, every place has its monster. And somehow, nobody ever finds the body. The real question isn't what's out there. It's why we keep hoping something is. Keep the lights on. And maybe skip the shortcut through the woods tonight.